Sorry, I have mine. Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi syrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah petang ni kita dapat bersama dalam satu majlis yang membincangkan tentang buku-buku yang berkaitan dengan peradaban Islam. Dan sebagaimana kita maklum, buku Islam di Tan Sri Said Nakib al-attas sedang dibicarakan untuk kali kedua. Kali pertama kita telah buat kira-kira sebulan yang lalu. Sebelum saya menjemput Profesor Zaini untuk memulakan perbincangan, saya nak memperkenalkan buku yang terbaru terbit di pasaran yang baru siap semalam. Ya, buku ni berjudul Tafsir Maudu'i Sungai oleh Profesor Dato Zulkifli Muhammad Yusof dan Zainiy Ujang. Buku ini insya-Allah akan dilancarkan oleh Tuanku Sultan Nazrin di Universiti Melaya pada pukul 10 pagi. Di Universiti Melaya pada pukul 10 pagi pada hari Isnin 25 hari bulan. Jadi saya menjemput semua hadirin untuk sama-sama ke majlis tersebut walaupun pendaftaran yang ditutup, tapi insya-Allah anda yang datang kemudian tu adalah sebahagian daripada anggota keluarga saya, insya-Allah. Ya. Buku ni juga penting bagi kita hari ini sebab pada 24 hari bulan September ialah Hari Sungai Sedunia itu esok. Ya, jadi sempena dengan majlis tersebut. Asalnya kita nak buat 24 hari bulan. Tapi 24 bulan ni hari Ahad dan melibatkan banyak logistik isu lah kalau kita nak buat di Universiti Melaya. Jadi terima kasih kepada pengurusan Universiti Melaya yang telah bersetuju meraihkan majlis ini, terutamanya kepada Tuanku Sultan Nazrin yang bersedia ataupun telah berkenan untuk bersama kita. Jadi kepada mereka yang berminat untuk dapatkan buku ini diterbitkan oleh Akademi Jawi Malaysia dan dengan kerjasama KASIS UTM. Jadi sila dapatkan di pasaran, dan buku ini kami cuba dapatkan pendanaan untuk endowment UTM khusus untuk banyak 50,000. Setiap sumbangan anda itu insya-Allah sebahagian daripadanya akan kita gunakan untuk beri sumbangan pada KASIS. Ya. Jadi dengan tak membuang masa, saya menjemput Profesor Zainiy Uthman untuk meneruskan agenda kita.
Terima kasih Datuk Seri Zaini kerana kesekian kalinya menjemput dan menjadi tuan rumah pada program kita Bicara Buku. Seperti biasa, saya minta kita jika dibenarkan untuk kita alih bahasa. This one picks up, Datuk Seri. Macam mana?
It's okay.
Is it on? Is it on? Okay. Pegang is difficult. I have.
Sudah.
Yeah.
Pegang tak boleh. Tak boleh. Boleh. Tolong on kan? Sorry.
Is it on?
No, sebelah sini. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, tak apa, kita jalan dulu lah. Kita on sekarang ni. Kita live.
Yeah. I have to ask the permission of the majlis and also those to switch languages because
Yes,
the nature
please.
of the book is in English. And we have been doing it in English last time. So I think last time we were talking about the nature of man to begin with, because as I was saying, the main way to analyze the book that is written by Prof. al-Attas is he uses the rubric of looking at the lafaz, the ism, and the musamma. And that's also the mainstay of the argument in the last part of the book, which is about the name Allah. But first, the issue is about Islam, the covenants fulfilled. So Prof. al-Attas would like to clarify who is it that fulfilled this thing called religion, and that religion has a name, Islam. So the main thing, what I've been discussed in the book, the nature of man himself, because we need to clarify man, who he is. because there is a confusion now, Dato Sri, and this is the result of what has become with the onslaught of modern science. And Proselatas paid a great tribute to that, and that is the theory of evolution. And Proselatas mentioned that this is quite a contribution of modern science. But we Muslims stand on the other side, despite the fact that we recognize their effort in trying to conceive the nature of man. But there is a problem, and the problem is a theory of evolution doesn't fix the nature of man to a person. So we do not know. As opposed to religion, and particularly religion of Islam and the Quran for that matter, there is a person with a name. So Adam is not a species. Adam is a name. After that, the whole host of uh, the progeny of Adam, we are called the sons of Adam, Bani Adam. So which makes it very fascinating. How is it that science try to come up to something which is indefinite? You know, of course, science always bank on the idea that we have doubt to bank on, because doubt is for them the basis of the progress in scientific discovery. Um, Proselatas has also uh, underscore the issue of doubt and conjecture in Islam that has been mentioned based on the verse of the Quran. But that's a subject of different discussion, I think. And he has talked about it in the book called Islam and the Philosophy of Science, which was a keynote address that he delivered at USM, I think 1989, the program on the philosophy of science. Um, so what I would like to do today is sort of picked up on the last end of the idea of the nature of man, and to say that Proselatas does not develop this thing out of something that is of a recent thing for him. He has developed this thing over years, and it has been like a maturing of the idea. And sometimes people ask me, why is it that only now he writes about this? Well, this is something that Proselatas always mentioned. It's also the argument in this book, why Islam is the final religion. And it's not the religion that begins with the earlier prophets. Because we live in a dimension of time and space. It takes time and it takes space for something to develop. Otherwise, Einstein would have the idea of Einstein theory of relativity. We could ask, why wasn't it thought of during the time of Aristotle or Democritus? It takes time. That's the nature of the dimension that we live in. And there is, of course, another dimension that we are part of it, but we fail to appreciate it. And that is the dimension which is, in Islam, we have the dimension that is spiritual and the body, the ruh and the jasad. That dimension, which is spiritual in nature, is not confined by time and space. That is
Can you
something.
repeat?
Sorry,
Can you repeat?
the spiritual aspect of man is not confined by the dimension of time and space. And this is the part that we are considered to be imale kehidupan abadi, bukan kehidupan adabi, kehidupan abadi, everlasting life is by virtue of the spirit. But the nature of life in the hereafter, of course, from the Islamic point of view, it is spiritual and body. But that body is of a different nature. It has gone through a process of transformation that is what Allah Ta'ala described, how we would how would we would be the nature that we are going to be in inshallah, if we are going to be in heaven, Tani. That's a different state altogether. But the point is the nature of man. Coming back to this, Professor Latas begins with talking about the nature of man, because man, as I say, he is the conscript, he is the nuskha, he is the page of which the covenant of religion is to be fulfilled, signed, and that's why he became a witness also. So we became a witness against our own soul. This is why Prophet Sallallahu was explaining, wa ashhada ala anfusihim. It does not mean on, tetapi it means against you. That is why it's going to be used against us on the day of judgment, whether we have lived up to the covenant. You see, so this is very interesting, and this covenant is very important because we we hear that Islam is dinu fitrah. What does that mean? Because normally people understand the word fitrah as nature, not the word nature that we understand today, of the world of nature, of the world of rivers and forests and jungles. And no, the word fitrah refers to Fatir samawati wal ard. God is the creator of the heavens and the world. So ad-dinu fitrah is the deen at the very onset of creation itself. That's is what it means. Meaning the deen has also been made clear on the very day of our creation. And this is why the hadith, there's a hadith, awwaluddin ma'rifatullah, at the very onset of religion, the very beginning of religion is knowledge concerning God. This hadith has been wrongly understood by some people by saying and blaming it on tasawwuf. That is, you do not actually practice your religion until you understand or arrive at the knowledge of God through ma'rifah, which makes it very difficult for people to sort of, reach ma'rifah. And therefore they make excuses. No, that's not it. Awaluddin ma'rifatullah. So, and this is why the covenant, alastu birabbikum. When Allah SWT gathered the progeny of Adam. So that is one aspect. And maybe later on we can have some questions about the idea realities. Where does this begin? So that discussion about the nature of man, Professor al-Attas has written in his book, The Prolegomena, Nature of Man, Psychology of the Human Soul. And the very beginning of this book is a continuation of the discussion from this book, Nature of Man, Justice and the Nature of Man, which begins from the page 31. So if you like to sort of, backtrack on the discussion concerning this one, you have to go back to this. And in order to go back to this, you have to go back to this. All right? So a lot of homework to be done. But it is fascinating, really, indeed, because the nature of man, Professor Lattas was mentioning, the process of creation, and that is first the khalaqa, and then ja'ala, and then ansha'a. This is quite unique because I think popular discussion about the nature of man does not include any of this aspect of the three verbs in reference to the creation of man. First, khalaqa is to create something. Prior to that, it is not in existence. Ja'ala is to draw the qualities out that of which it has been created to make it into something else. Like you make someone into a president. He was born. Ansha'a is to again bring out something and to elevate. And this is what Prophet was saying when the verse in the Quran, concerning the creation of man, ثُمَّ أَنشَأْنَاهُمْ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. Although we were created based on some of the bases or choices clay, meaning it's basically thin, clay and mud and water, but when we were born, that birth bring us into a different creature altogether with different uh, capabilities and potentialities that later on we will somehow, these potentialities will materialize or they realize. And this is why some of us become what we become, history. Yeah. Thank you, history. So this is just a brief run through of what has been discussed about the nature of man. It's going to be difficult to go if we were to go line by line. So the other thing is, because we have centered on the idea that Adam is a personality. Therefore, he does not fall under any classification that is scientific in nature. So, if we were to follow the kingdom of nature, then you have animal, plants, and mineral. Rasulullah is saying, therefore, Bani Adam, man, should not fall under the kingdom of animal. And this is why the Quran describes the classification of man, not man as if as opposed to women, but humankind. We are divided into shu'uban wa qabaila. And this is why, as I was saying, I was joking to my wife, Dato Seri, I don't remember the verse of Surah An-Nisa, the khutbah nikah. You see, anybody remembers that we create you from one man and one woman and make you many men and women? Because I only married once, so I don't remember. That is the verse. Prophet Sallallahu, the basis for him is that this is the verse that says that we created you, and that Adam is a different creation. He does not fall under the classification of animals. And this is why Prophet Sallallahu discusses at length the difference between nafsul haya and nafsul natiqah. The animated soul and the rational cognitive soul. Human beings are gifted with the rational cognitive soul, the ability for us to create science. It's very fascinating indeed. But we do have something common with other living things, with animals and plants, and that is nafsul haya. That is the animated soul by which we gain life. And at death, the animated soul is taken away. But remember, the Quran says, "Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut." So nafs. So which nafs? And that is what Prophet is saying is the rational cognitive that remains. That is why we can taste death. And that is why death is not a physical taste. It's of a different nature of taste. How does it work? As I was saying, although it is rational cognitive, at the moment of death, the intellect doesn't work. It ceases its operation. What works at that point is the qalb, with its higher operation of what we call intellectual activity. At that point, because the intellect has sort of ceases together with the nafsul what is it that escaped me? No, with the animated soul, nafsul haywaniyah, nafsul haya. Sorry, the intellect goes with the nafsul haya. The imagination is alive, and it's the cult that is alive at that point. And this is why a lot of people, all of us, must have heard the description that when people at their last stage of death, they sort of stare blank and they sort of see where they're going to go. That is not by ocular sight. That is not by this physical sight. That is the sight of the inner, and that belongs to the ruh, that belongs to the qalb. Therefore, the intellect doesn't work. At that point, no longer rationalization. Am I dying? Please don't make me die. No, it doesn't work that way, because at that point, the animal aspect. Because remember the last time when we were discussing about this, the ruh as considered to be the ground zero. Then you have the qalb, and then you have the aqal, and then you have the nafs, because the nafs is the one that's connected with the physical world outside. So this is why you see the nafsul haya, it's connected with the intellect. The qalb is by itself protected. And this is why it's very fascinating. The issue of the covenant, Professor Attas is saying, we must be directed by the rational in order to fulfill the covenant. And this is why Adib's question last time, the first meeting, what is confirmation? What is affirmation? The affirmation part is the cognitive, the rational part. There is the iman. The confirmation of the religion, as I was saying, is the act of the body. And that is where sometimes the nifaq You have two aspects of nifaq. But the worst of nifaq is at the level of rational cognitive. That's why shirik is a rational cognitive problem, isn't it? You may exhibit a very religious outward behavior, but inside you have a completely shirik idea of God. Mashallah. That's nifaq, you see? That's hypocrisy of a highest kind. And this is why uh, what Pak Adib was asking the last time is very important. How do you affirm something? And this is why Prophet Sallallahu discusses about that. First is at-tasdiq bil qalbi, which is the assent of the heart. To what? To the unity of God. And that tasdiq, that is the affirmation. And that has to do with the rational cognitive part of the soul. See? Wal iqrar bil lisan. And then you declare it with your tongue. Wal amal bi jawarih. That is the confirmation. You see, affirmation in the heart, nobody knows. But confirmation with your iqrar, and this is why we have to make kalimatu shahada. This is why, and we have to repeat it all the time, at least what, 17 times or more in our salah per day.
Why repetition occur so many times? So, for example,
Well,
kenapa zikir you have to do it 33 times, not once?
That is ask a very interesting question. This has to do with something called khalqan jadid, which we don't actually realize how important it is. And this is what Professor Latas also has brought out. And I didn't understand its full implication until of late, when I've been working on my book, particularly like yesterday when you stopped by. I said, I was working on my book. Because Dato Sri, we are recreated at every moment. And at every moment of our recreation, not recreation like sports.
Recreation.
This is khalqan jadi, recreation. Kalau recreation is sports. Yeah. We are kullu yawmin huwa fi sha'in. This is the description in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala at every moment he is in activity. That activity is sustaining his creation. And the sustaining of his creation, partly for some level of tafsir, it means he gives them rizq. No, but the higher level of tafsir means he recreates the creation at every moment. The moment to kalamhim bil basar, meaning it is, how do you say, it is imperceptible. We cannot feel our recreation. So when we were created or are recreated, our ground zero, the ayanu tabita, the haqa'iq, remains the same. But our external, not the ayan, that is being taken back into non-existence and being put back. So the shahada is because of that. The confirmation, the affirmation. So in other words, you have the metaphysical aspect of that, Dato Sri. This is why people don't realize how important dhikr is and repetition. Why would we just say, when you ask your wife, why don't you, I just say only once, I love you, cukup lah. It doesn't work. You have to repeat. Not that she doesn't trust you. It's just nice to hear. So because you love. And this is why sometimes religion is put in the rubric of love. You see? But the metaphysical aspect of it, Dato Sri, is, mashallah, at every moment of our being recreated, at that particular moment, we say Alhamdulillah, Hamdallah, we say Tasbih, Subhanallah. Then you are exclaiming, confirming your covenant. That's why the importance of it. And that's why it's called dhikr. Because in the verse that Prosatas brought out here, let me see. What is that verse now? You know, alastu birabbikum. Do you find that verse?
That's page.
Sorry? Page 17. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا أَنْ تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. The ghafil aspect, the ghafla, the forgetfulness. You see? And this is why we must mention it again, the Shahada. So I think that's very important. And this is a good point to begin the second part of this book. And that has to do with the name Islam. Islam, Professor al-Attas wants to underscore there is a big problem with now translation of the term Islam. And he feels that there is a serious effort trying to confuse one thing, but trying to reduce the meaning of Islam. As I said, we must remember the lafaz, the ism, and the musamma. As I said last time, this is Zaini, this is Zaini. Lafaz the same, ism the same, the musamma different. The musamma A, musamma B. The ism the same. The lafaz, Islam is like that. So here's the problem Professor al-Attas is saying. There is now a movement trying to say that the word Islam only refers to an activity, and that is submission.
Hmm.
And that submission is not only so much of an activity, but it is a verbal noun derived from some form of the Arabic verb. Now, this is something I would like to highlight for those who may know Arabic, but for those who do not know Arabic, this is very important. The word we say Arabic has different forms. That's English. The actual word for form in Arabic is wazan, wazana. Now, the word wazan in Arabic does not mean form in English. It means weight.
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 Weight. W-A-I-T.
W-E-I-G-H-T.
W-E-I. Weight. Okay, your weight.
The measure of
The
your
measure.
action.
Yeah, okay.
And this is why on the day of judgment, your actions will be weighted. Not just look at the form. So Arabic has fa'ala, fa'ala, tafa'ala, all kinds, all the way to the fourth, the 10th verb. Ataupun for those who are really expert, 14, the roots. They have different weight. And this is why your action is going to be weighted on the day of judgment. So this is why you see the acuteness, the acuity of Professor al-Attas' analysis. How can you reduce the immensity of the verb aslama to only like a verbal noun that has no value, no weight? That's why he was discussing, because he says that people who translate the word Islam into submission, there are two kinds. One, translate that with an English mind, thinking that it's submission, that's it. So because, every religion submit, so God must admit or accept all submission. Then Prophet said that is where the logic fails, because if all religions Allah Ta'ala accepts, what's the point of having prophets? Isn't it? And this makes some people who follow some other religious traditions very happy. And this is why Prophet is saying, no, it is very careful that we must look at this term Islam. Of course, it is based on the word aslama. But Prophet is saying, aslama is not to submit in the Arabic Islamic sense. Yeah, it is only one aspect of the meaning, because salim, actually, the root word, you must go and look at the root word. Salima means peace.
Salima.
Yeah, the word is from salima, and salima means peace. So aslama is to make peace, actually. And this is why it's very fascinating about Orientalist works. Look at Islam within the context of historical and political development in the region. Looks at Islam as a way, for some reason they find it very interesting, why Islam champions itself as a religion of peace, because the two warring civilizations before them, the Persians and the Romans. Now, I was reading in preparation for this talk today Apparently, according to one interpretation, because there are many discussions about this in early tafsir, Tabari, Muqatil, many others. Why, for example, the Prophet ﷺ was more inclined towards the Roman, not so much the Persian. You must remember, and I would agree with the earlier commentators, because you see, the Prophet, Rasul ﷺ was part of a mission that is prophetic in nature and revelation based. And we know that the Romans were the ones who actually, for good or for bad, there was Isa with them. There was Moses with them before that. And the Persians did not have that. And it's quite an interesting part of history that we must develop. Because Persia, as I said, I mean, civilizationally, located in Tigris Euphrates, which is now Iraq and Iran, the seat of the Persian Empire, was also the place where Ibrahim alayhi salam thrived. But he left. And this is where Prof drew a long sort of travelogue of what happened to Ibrahim alayhi salam. He moved out from that civilization that is associated with Noah and moved to the land of the Canaan, Palestine, later on to Jerusalem, later on to Egypt, and then back to, not back, but went to Mecca. And this is quite a unique story because Prophet al-attas was saying, this is his own interpretation. He said, according to him, he understands in such a way that Ibrahim was directed by Allah Ta'ala to go to Mecca, not because there was a squabble between Sarah and Hajar, not because of jealousy between Sarah and Hajar. So he has to take them away far apart. He was saying, logically, if you want to separate your wives, you don't go thousands of miles into a desert land. You know? Why would you do that? Betul tak? You just take the next village. Enough. And look, Prophet was a new dimension because this, as I said, the plan of this is what Prophet was saying. The plan of Allah must be taken its due time and space. So Islam developed in Mecca because that was the plan of Allah Ta'ala. Why, for example, in Mecca, you have a new aspect of religion, which is basically started by a woman, and that is Sa'i, Safa and Marwa. That's related to Hajar. No Haji, no Hajj will be valid without that. And that's not the Sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's very fascinating, isn't it? But Prophet was saying, no one talks about this. It's not like a woman created part of Islam. No, but that's part of the religion that Allah Ta'ala wants to develop later on. See, Islam must develop in full-fledged. And Prophet was mentioning here that, Ibrahim alayhi salam used to come and visit, Hajar and Ismail. And I remember reading this book, Fihris bin Nadim. Ibrahim met his son Ismail, and because Ibrahim spoke a different language, Ismail married to the tribe of Jurhum. He spoke Arabic, and that is why Ibrahim was mentioned according to Nadim in this Fihris. I'rab. I'rab today in Arabic, if you go to any class in Arabic, I'rab means vocalize. We put tashkil, fatha, damma, kasra. No, what it means is that translate them into Arabic, because Ibrahim spoke to Ismail in a different language. Yeah. So this is fascinating, and this is why we must look at the early history, and this is what Prophet was mentioning, that we must again look at this part. You see, the Quran talks a lot about the Proto-Arab, the Ad, the Thamud, Madain Saleh, the Nabi Saleh, and the others. But when we hear about the story about prophets from the Judeo-Christian, you hear a lot more about, we don't hear about the earliest, right? We hear more about Greek, Roman, and then Jacob and what have you. So we need more people to go in this field. Inshallah, with the new opening of Saudi Arabia, these places can now be visited and we can see them. fascinating part. So coming back to Islam, the verb is not proselytize, meaning referring to submission alone, because then if you turn Islam into just a submission, then there is a problem, because who do you submit to? The question, the subject, meaning the man himself. And then after that, who does this man or the person who becomes Islam or Muslim wants to submit to? You cannot just make every religion. This is a problem because, for example, if you look at the verse in the Quran, Inna Dina Indallahil Islam, verily the religion, because Inna Deen, the definite article before the Deen, the Deen, before the sight of God is Inna Dina Indallahil Islam. There is a definite article again, not without a definite article, the Islam. So if you were to translate the Islam into submission, then verily the religion before the sight of God is submission. Then every religion can claim we all submit. Then you have a problem. Which God do you submit to? And this is what Prophet al-attas is afraid of. You demean the position of Islam. You brought it low. You brought low Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You brought low your own, and then you smack all the mission of the previous prophets. And this is what Prophet al-attas was saying. Read again. I mean, we have no time to go into greater detail. Like earlier prophets, the name Allah was not clearly mentioned to them because they were not speaking Arabic. I remember when Prophet al-attas first thought about this, when my wife and I were visiting him, he was sort of, sometimes he tried to make something simple. So he would explain in a very simple way. If Nabi Ibrahim, if we were to consider him a Muslim, yes, but in Islam, as-salah imaduddin, prayer is the pillar of religion. Did the Prophet Ibrahim pray like we pray? He didn't. Did he say Fatiha like we did? The only thing that is in our salah is dua Ibrahimiyah. Wajhatu wajhiya lilladhi fatara samawati. And that's the point Prophet was saying. Because Ibrahim realized the process. And you must look again. Read again. Very fascinating. Earlier civilizations, they all have the same aspects. You have statues, which we call idols, everywhere. The Persians had it, the Greeks have it, the Indians have it, even the Chinese have it, So this is why Prophet al-attas used to joke, Alexander the Great, went far and wide, he reached India and he looked, it's the same. It's just different name in a different language, but they're gods and goddesses. So nothing new to discover, nothing new to discover. So this Islam is a unique name. And this Islam, there are many aspects to it, Dato Sri. We cannot go into every aspect of it. That's one, the prayer. But I added my own discovery, what I found, not really a discovery. Because when I look at the commentary on the hadith, Dr. Hilmi can verify this, from Kastalani, Irshadu Sari fi Sharh Sahih Bukhari. But you all know about this. You just never thought of it. And what is it? The Isra Mi'raj. What happened? All the prophets prayed behind Rasulullah, isn't it? Now, if Ibrahim, who considered to be the Abrahamic faith, the father of so-called religion, why didn't he lead the prayer? Because he did not get the form of submission in the form of Islam. And this is why Prophet is trying to explain the verse. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today I perfected your deen. And that has to do with the form of submission, the way we pray. and the what we say. You see, and this is why in what we say also contains the prayer of Ibrahim. See, it does not mean that we chiplak, because some people were saying, oh, this circumambulation in around the Kaaba, oh, that's being done even before. No, you see, otherwise then everybody chiplak. You want to make iPhone now, you need rare earth. Why don't you call that chiplak daripada Indonesia or Malaysia for rare earth? No, you created something new. Yeah. The ingredients for making cake is the same. You know, but it's a different cake. Black forest, red velvet, it's the same. It's just flour, sugar, what have you. So that's the thing. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today I perfected your religion. Wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. And I complete my I will say blessings unto you, favors. Yeah. Wa raditu lakumul Islam dinan. And I am pleased that this deen called Islam is what I accept. And this is why it's a completely different religion altogether. And this is why the mission of the Prophet Sallallahu, he is to complete that religion. And this is why if, if you look verses at the Quran, for example, the one that I remember about Isa alayhi salam, Mubashiran bi rasulin ya'ti min ba'di ismuhu Ahmad, musaddiqan lima bayna yadayya wa mubashiran bi rasulin ya'ti min ba'di ismuhu Ahmad. I'm here to confirm what we have between us, among us, which is the Torah. But I'm also here to give you good tidings that there is a prophet coming after me, and his name is Ahmad. See, so that's the other part of the confirmation and the affirmation, Fadi, and that has to do with it. And here it's very interesting. Professor al-Attas was mentioning, and it is in complete agreement with what I see in the tafsir, page 22. Let's go to page 21 first. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ. So this is the covenant between the prophets. لَمَّا آتَيْتُكُمْ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَحِكْمَةٍ ثُمَّ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَكُمْ لِتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ وَلَا تَسُرَنَّهُ قَالَ أَأَقْرَرْتُمْ وَأَخَذْتُمْ عَلَى ذَلِكُمْ إِصْرِي قَالُوا أَقْرَرْنَا قَالَ فَاشْهَدُوا وَأَنَا مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. And recall, this is to the people of the scripture, meaning people Ahlul Kitab, when Allah took the covenants of the prophets. So there is this. This is why all prophets fulfill the covenant. But the final covenant in the form of Islam fulfilled both covenants, saying, whatever I give you of the scripture and wisdom, and then there comes to you a message confirming with what is with you, you must believe in him and support him. Then Allah says, have you acknowledged and taken up that my commitment? They say, we have acknowledged it. And he say, then bear witness, I am with you among the witnesses. The second verse is very important. And this is what the ulama of Mufassirin were saying. This is quite fascinating. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَمِنْكَ. Why is minka the prophet mentioned first? وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ. When we take the covenants with the prophets, وَمِنْكَ, and from you, Muhammad, وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى ibn Maryam, وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهَا مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. And mentioned, O Muhammad, we took from the prophets their covenant, and from you, from Noah, from Ibrahim, from Musa, Isa. This, the Mufassirin say, is the reason why the prophet was really created first. At the realm of what Professor al-Attas discussed earlier, the haqa'iq. But in this manifest existence, it takes time and space. al-Attas was saying, Rasul Sallam came last. But the covenant was taken much earlier with you, no. See, so he was the first. That's why there is the saying dalam buku Professor al-Attas, the other one, And he always says, there's this saying, "Kuntu nabiyyan," I was a prophet. Wa Adama baina ma wa tin. I was a prophet when Adam was between what, clay and water. Yeah. So that shows the prior positions of the Prophet Sallallahu. Now, why are we doing this? Well, this is the thing. You must understand. Prophet Sallallahu has never separate what is called spiritual, metaphysical with common understanding. So, in many of his interpretation, there's an element of metaphysics, and metaphysics for him is not the ken of philosophy. Metaphysics is the work of Ahl Tasawwuf, and the true ones. All right, the true ones. So, do I have it here? Yeah, I hope I can show you here. This book is available from Zain Book House. If you don't want to carry this big one, they come in small monographs. So this is, I think, third chapter from here concerning religion, because it has to do with ibadah. The footnote on page 20 to 21. We do not, in at least, mean here that ibadah becomes identified with ma'rifah. Remember I said earlier, awaluddin ma'rifah? Because some people think that, having ma'rifah, there's no need to ibadah because kononnya high Sufi. No, that's the wrong idea. The former as work or service is called amal, which is ibadah. Ibadah is called amal, including the prayer, salah, the prescribed meaning the obligatory ones, fard, and the confirmed practice of the Prophet. This is called ibadah, sunnah. We must do all those. And the supererogatory, the nawafil. These are all still incumbent. You must do them, although you have whatever ma'rifah. Ma'rifah, Prophet al-attas defined, is both the right cognition, not right knowledge, right cognition. Remember when I talked about here in page 177 about the human soul? The other part is cognition, the other of the human soul, rational and cognition. We talked about the cognition because the rational is the purview of the intellect, of the akal. And that is why ma'rifah is not the work of akal. You cannot, it's not like, a formula that you work out the solution. QED. No, not ma'rifah is not QED.
Yeah. QED.
Ma'rifah is something that Allah Ta'ala gives. Look, ma'rifah is knowledge of a right cognition and the right feeling or spiritual mood, which is called hal in tasawwuf. The former, which marks the final stages of the spiritual state, maqamat. Okay? And it precedes the latter, which marks the beginning of a spiritual state called ahwal. So ma'rifah marks the spiritual transition point between the spiritual station and the spiritual state. As such, and since it is knowledge that comes from God, meaning Allah Ta'ala only, that He is the only one that can give you this ma'rifah. Not like, I jumpa Tok Guru, I dapat ma'rifah. No, it doesn't work that way. I've been following this Tok Guru, this share, then I have ma'rifah. No. If you say that, then this is not real tasawwuf. It's not the tasawwuf of the great ulama of the Sufi line. So ma'rifah marks the spiritual transition point between the spiritual station and spiritual state. As such, and since it is knowledge that comes from God to the heart, to the qalb, not the intellect, and depends entirely upon him, it is not necessarily a permanent condition, unless it is continually secured and fortified by ibadah. Your answer, Dato Sri. Kenapa zikir? Kenapa syahadah all the time? It must be confirmed and fortified with ibadah. And this is why syahadah all the time. Even without salah, out of salah, something astonishing happened to you, even something so out of the ordinary. Astaghfirullah, shadu an la ilaha illallah. You recall again your belief and your strength and your commitment to Allah Ta'ala. Because why? That is your fitrah. That is the fitrah. That's what it means, not nature. It means your fitrah is from Allah Ta'ala. So you sort of reboot the computer language. You reboot for your fitrah with shahada. With shahada. Yeah. So he who discerns and knows it in the case, and the one who receives knowledge from God about God is an arif, and he can transform his bada solely into contemplation. Meaning, after that, not every ibadah becomes contemplation, not the reverse. Contemplation does not become ibadah, but your ibadah becomes contemplation because it's of a higher level of hudu. Your qalb is present in your prayer. And that's why I said, do not use your intellect during prayer. It destroys everything, you know. Allahu Akbar. What does it mean? God is greater than mengakalkan semayang. It doesn't work. Okay. So his ibadah solely into contemplation for the arif is acutely aware of the fact that he becomes one, at least partly due to his ibadah. Partly due to his ibadah, he becomes an arif. He knows God through his ibadah, which is by means he approaches his Lord. It's a good question that you asked. You see, this is what Prophet, it's quite to me, I come to realize that the way he explains about religion is not like we understand today, one-sided. The halal haram. If you don't do this, but there is this aspect. He calls it metaphysics, but we call it tasawwuf. We call it tasawwuf, and because it is beyond physical, metaphysics is beyond physical. So that's what he means by it, right? So 5 minutes atau
Okay. Like you go. No, kita sama habis lewat. Tapi you go first.
Okay. Any question in yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this one. Ma'rifatullah.
Okay, Prof. Tadi Prof mention about definition of ma'rifah.
Yeah.
Kan ma'rifah. And then Prof ada stress out pada words hal.
Yes.
Saya ingat satu hadis Nabi yang warid.
Yeah.
Ya muhawwilul ahwal. Hawil halana ila ahsanil hal.
Yeah.
So nak minta Prof explain more details. Macam mana kita nak kaitkan doa tu dengan action of ibadah.
In order to arrive to that, one has to have a very sharp concentration, on what you're doing. And this is why I don't have my book here. Do you have the book Psychology here, Dato?
Yeah.
Al-attas psychology, if you can get it. The concentration that I said that must be of a high acute level in order to achieve that level of a very high standing of hal, because the hal we translate into maqamat. The maqamat is the one that Allah Ta'ala grants you. Hal is the one that you are in yourself. So in order to do that, this is why it is said, remember it's in the ibadah context. So innamal a'malu binniyat wa likulli imri'in ma nawa. And this is why the intention is very important. And I have explained the meaning of intention in here. And this is very important because people miss this point. And this is in relation to what Professor al-Attas has explained. And I developed this. Hold on a second, let me find it in the index 152. Yes, I think it is 152. Previously 134. Yeah. Professor al-Attas, why I have managed to explain this, because I understood what Professor al-Attas was explaining the meaning of knowledge. The meaning of knowledge is the arrival of meaning in the soul. I have a problem with that definition because I don't quite understand. Because he says after that, at the same time, the arrival of the soul at meaning. So why do you need two parts? Arrives at the soul. Then I thought about it further, and I keep on saying, Prophet saying, remember, Allah Ta'ala gives knowledge. So that's meaning from Allah Ta'ala gifted to the soul. That's the first part. then the arrival of the soul at meaning, it is when we, as the active person looking for knowledge, arrive at meaning. But it arrive at the soul. But where in the soul? Does Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gives meaning to the intellect? This is why my book, al-attas psychology, the philosophers like Ibn Sina, influenced by Aristotle, was thinking that humankind can have a connection with what they call active intelligence to get higher meanings. And that active intelligence for them is Jibreel. I have a problem with that. And Fazlur Rahman has a problem with that. Because that would lend to what he calls natural prophecy. Everyone can become prophet. Then Prophet al-attas make it very, very clear, because then I, as I said, my wife stumbled upon the verse and said, you know, وَنَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. Then I realized the meaning that arrives for us human being, normal, mortal, it arrives in the qalb. The intellect, then the ratiocination, the ratio cognitive aspect of the soul arrive at that meaning, because the higher level from the qalb, then it goes down to the intellect. That's where the niyyah is. See? Niyyah. As I said, let's go back. The meaning of ibadah, the meaning of action that's requisite duties and obligations, the ibadah in religion and all other acts which enjoin good, true, and right action in conformity with ethical and moral principles espoused by religion, all of them are acts of devotion as part of what is called ibadah. Yeah? When performed and practiced with pure intention, niyyah, and sincerity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that becomes ibadah. Otherwise, it's not. You don't have the right niyyah, it's not ibadah. Innamal a'malu binniyat wa likulli. But what is niyyah? Niyyah is an instantiation in the soul. Very instant. As and when meaning, makna, that has arrived in the soul, wusulul ma'na, coalesces, it comes together or meet with the intentio, maqsud. At the point makna arrives in the qalb, the intentio in the aqal come together. You intend the right thing, the intent, the maqsud, intend the right thing with the meaning, that is proper niyyah. Like for example, Dr. Husni recently want to go to Hajj, Umrah. He understood what Umrah is, and his intention is, if his intention is, this is what the hadith says, if the intention is for a mar'ah, pergi Umrah nak tackle wife dia lagi, second honeymoon, it's a different thing. It's not the right niyyah. You see? The ibadah may be counted of a lower degree. Yeah. So niyyah is an instantiation in the soul as and when meaning, makna, arrived in the soul, coalesces or meets with the intentio as the soul arrives at the said meaning, usulul makna. That is when you can see this. Try this after this. You want to make prayer. You try to bring the understanding with your intention. Then that is the hudur of a different kind.
Okay. Prof, why previous ummah, say for example, apa ni, Ibrahim, you name it, their people became misguided, and they have images, ada berhala, ada apa. So is that, so takkan semua misguided?
Yeah.
Why they go that far?
Thank you, Dato. Good question. I skip, and alhamdulillah, Dato reminded the part which is very important to describe. Islam, as we discussed, is a name of a religion. Prophet al-attas in this book, prior to coming to that argument, he started out a discussion on millah. Millah is, and he gives a definition of that. You can find the book in the book. Sorry?
22-23.
22-23. Millah is like, it started out with ada, customs, People used to do this, used to do that. Now, there's a book that was written, kitab written by Raniri, Nuruddin Raniri, called Tibyan fi Ma'rifati Islam. explication on the meaning of the different religions. And this is why Professor al-Attas also discusses about why later on the word deen actually is only one word referring to the deen of Islam. You cannot use the term deen to any other religion. But later on, like Tibyan fi ma'rifatil adyan, see, is there because people has become accustomed to the idea that these are also deen. So it is possible to discuss in that way. Now, in that book, Dato Sri, Raniri was talking about how this act ataupun this worshipping of idols came into being. It started out when Adam alayhi salam passed away. And over time, again, over time, the children of Adam felt that they missed their father and their mother. So they decided to make statues of them. At first, just for remembrance, they would just go and look at them. And over time, they develop into a certain kind of ada, custom, you know. And then at one point, according to Raniri, Shaitan appeared in the statue and start saying, worship me. So that's how it is being relayed or related in the book of Tibyaan fi Ma'rifatil Adyan. But uh, that narration is on the is let's put that aside. But the point being, every locality, every time and space, there's a space, there's a place, there's a location. They will have their certain customs, and that customs can become eventually, what Professor Sas was saying, somewhat religious in nature. And this is why, for example, we living among us here, there are non-Muslims, the Chinese. When you see them at the red box, we call that smayang, but for them that's not smayang. They are not praying; they are paying respects to the dearly departed. So nothing wrong. But for us, we regard that as smayang. You see, they don't have notion of prayer. But when English try to translate that, what they do in their temples, they say they pray. No, they don't have concept of prayer, But you ask the Chinese, you're the ibadat ke? No, they will not say that they have ibadat because it's a custom. They respect their dead because of filial piety. They must respect their elders, you know. Yeah, and respect of the elders. The same thing with the Indians' custom, you know. Professor Latas used to say, they are the ones who take so-called, I mean, this is jokingly. We have a hadith that says, Al Jannatu tahta aqdami ummahat. Heaven lies in the feet of mothers. Which tradition, which culture that touches the mother's foot? Indian. We Muslims don't do that. We don't even kiss our wife's feet. Tak berani. So that's custom. See? So Indians may have their idols and whatever. So this is why I like to see. Because I was thinking about this and I was expecting a question like this. The case of Moses. Moses, when Allah asked him to come to Mount Sinai, what happened? The people that he left behind, they created something to worship. Because the Jews, or rather, they are not Jews, they're Hebrews. Ibrahim has taught them, Noah has taught them. And at the point of Moses, try to tell to them, your Lord is not these things. He is unseen. That's why Moses, I was telling my wife earlier today, Moses alayhi salam had to say, I want to see you jahratan, clearly. And that's why Allah Ta'ala, if you see the mountain standing, perhaps there is a possibility. No, he fell asleep. Kharra sa'iqan. Tak laga. See? Because he lives among the people who wants to see a representation of deity. But there are amongst him who sort of followed him. First, of course, his brother, Harun. And there are some small group. But among the greater part of the Hebrews, because why? They were living among the The Egyptians and the Romans, who have their own gods and goddesses, have their own statues. And they have god Neptune, Hera, all kinds. That's why they want to have their own, and it's a cup or in the form of a heifer. They need something like that. So this is why what you they have an idea of God, let us see. It's in their mind, the affirmation. But once they put it outside, habis. That's why the confirmation and affirmation. Alhamdulillah, we may have a very clouded idea of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, so long as our action doesn't confirm the cloudiness of our iman. Alhamdulillah. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, we're not going to count that against you. Betul tak? And this is why the beauty of alaikum bil jama'ah. Please stand by the majority, because you may have a very clouded idea what tauhid is. Tak faham, you still go and pray. That you may be saved. That's okay. And this is why majlis ilmu like this, min Rawdatul Jannah. Amin ya ni. There may be one here whose niyyah is so pure. That goes to him. All of us will get the benefit. You see? All of us come here with clouded ideas about things. Yeah. But how do they get clouded? That's the point. That's the mission of the prophets. Partly because, as I said, when Allah said, Antakulu and hadha ghafilin, we forgot that part of the covenant. That's why when we take this form of manifested existence, wow, this world is so beautiful. The cult becomes repressed. We forgot. And this is why the prophet, all the prophets, all of them, the life of their cult is different from ours. And in particular, Rasul Sallallahu, he was mentioned in the Quran, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Whatever he speaks, yantiq. And the Prophet discussed about this mantiq, the ability of logic of man. So, Rasul did not talk based on outside things, but he talks based on the life of the revelation that has shaped his mind. And this is why the worldview, buddy, the worldview. This is why we must keep on refreshing our worldview. Yeah, so that it doesn't get clouded. Now this is why Prophet was saying what happens now with the word Islam becomes submission now. Because the worldview has been confused. Partly because you may have lived in the West for a long time. And there's also this idea, I must say clearly, because I've read many works of Guénon. I've read the works of I've read Titi's book out, but Guénon in particular, and then I read Knowledge of the Sacred by Nasser, and I've read also Smith, Transcendent Unity of Religion. And this is why Prasatas in this book here, at the very beginning of the Prolegomena, he must mention something about it, you see, the Transcendent Unity of Religion. Because it has to do with the submission also. First, they started out with the Transcendent Unity of Religion. Why? Sophia Perennis is a very...
Probably ramai tak dengar.
Sophia Perennis is a Latin word for perennial philosophy, perennial wisdom. Because they think that the great minds of the past, like Aristotle, Socrates, everything, they're philosophers. So they are perennial, meaning it's all over. There must be philosophy. Religion is after philosophy. It's an aftershoot of philosophy. So religion is a smaller thing. So this is what Professor Task was saying. For them to entertain why religion is like that, they look at the issue by saying that transcendent unity of religion. All religions at the higher level refers to the same thing. And that's the basis of submitting becoming the main thing for all religions. Houston Smith wrote a book. He wrote an introduction to a book, Transcendent Unity of Religion by Houston Smith. I was looking for the book, couldn't find it. That's the thing. Transcendent Unity of Religion. Houston Smith make the diagram like this. There is this line. Above is the esoteric, batin. Below is the exoteric, zahir. And at the top of this line, you have a point, and that God, of course, diagrammatically, God, and that aligns. Okay, this line is like Islam, Christianity, Judaism. So all lines leads to God. So when you cross the boundary of esotericism from esotericism, exo to eso, zahir to batin, all leads to God. Doesn't matter.
Kristen sebenarnya bukan Islam kan?
No,
No.
no. So
I have the book.
Professor Latas was saying, no, they got it wrong. What it is that once you hit the line that separates between zahir and batin, that line will, the right one, will push you to Islam. And that will lead you to Allah Ta'ala. Because the right submission, the right form of submission. Itu yang penting. Because the form of submission, and Professor Latas discussed about it, has to do with, I forgot which page. It's quite long, dia punya, sorry, I thought I found it. It's quite long, the definition of Islam.
Page 25. The word Islam with the article.
Let me see, is that right? 25? No. There's a very long definition he gives. And finally, the last word is, this is Islam. Sorry, I didn't put under. Maybe I did.
26, 26.
Huh?
27 sama. 40.
40. The last paragraph, it's a long paragraph, and it ends with, yeah, you're right, 39, 40. I tak ada pun. There you go. What is D? What is D? Okay. It is religion that was revealed by Allah to his prophets and messenger, and not religion that was the product of human intervention. Okay. It is tradition. It is tradition, because religion part of tradition that goes back all the way to the original millah of all the prophets and the messengers of God. It is a way of life. It has to do with sirah. Okay, it has to do with sirah. Sirah is a way of life of the prophets, lived in accordance with that tradition. It is law. It has the shara. Okay, sharia, and it has hukum, the practical application of the moral, legal principles and ordinances of the religion. It is judgment, qada, meaning you kena percaya pada qada and qadar. It is reckoning, hisab, the requital. This is on the day of judgment. It is guidance, huda, the straight path, siratal mustaqim. It is unconditional obedience, ta'ah, and humble submissiveness, inqiyad. It is satisfaction and contentment, jaza. Allah Ta'ala gives to you, you have to be redha with it. That's the jaza, you know. It is a spiritual or mental state of being or a state of historical circumstance. It is hal. Tadi kita cakap. It is serving God with humility and submissiveness with what He approves. That is ibadah. Whatever He says, do this, that becomes ibadah. It is the statement of witnessing, the kalimah shahada. And this is what Professor was saying in an earlier discussion. He was saying, what separates Islam with other religions? And I remember William Chittick was discussing with Prof al-attas about this. They said, you know, and Chittick wrote about this. The problem with Islam is inclusivity. Exclusivity. What is it? Islam only admits those who believe in the Prophet. The first part, we have no problem. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. We all believe in God. But the second part, we have a problem. That's what Chittick was saying. Islam is so exclusive that, you know, the second part becomes a problematic. But Professor Latas was saying, the kalimah shahada, inclusive of the Prophet's punya statement too, of his prophecy, that is the defining part of Islam. If you take that out, that is not Islam. No. Yeah.
Soalan saya ni more to history aspect.
It's okay.
Kita tahu zaman Nabi SAW, kemudian zaman Khulafaur Rasyidin, ramai sahabat-sahabat yang dihantar keluar and pergi jauh-jauh. Jadi sahabat-sahabat yang pergi keluar ni, dia mungkin tidak tahu apakah wahyu yang sampai kepada Nabi. Sebab dia ada jauh, dia tak mendengar direct, dan mungkin the transmission tu nak sampai dekat dia, mungkin dia dah ada dekat China ke Iraq. Okay, mungkin apa yang dia faham tentang Islam setakat mana yang dia dengar daripada Nabi sendiri. Jadi dalam proses tu bukan akan ada pemahaman-pemahaman yang sedikit berbeza lah. sedikit beza ataupun tidak lengkap atau tidak cukup. Kan, jadi ini mungkin menimbulkan tafsiran-tafsiran yang berbeza daripada tu. So, macam mana kita nak reconcile tu, sebab yalah orang kata tak semestinya yang sahabat-sahabat kemudian bertemu, walaupun di zaman Khulafaur Rasyidin, jadi mungkin akan ada, jadi mereka yang pergi ke China misalnya, mereka mungkin kadang menyebarkan apa yang mereka faham, yang pergi ke Iraq kan, jadi perkara-perkara yang mungkin menimbulkan perbezaan-perbezaan yang yalah kita tak selesai.
Okay. And this is why, so I mean, that's a very good question. And this is why the first step that was done, I think during Sayyidina Uthman, was first to codify the Quran, to systematize it, standardize it. As far as the hadith of the Prophet, the tradition varies, and this is why, for example, as far as the Maliki is concerned, the ada, the customs of the people of Medina, because they were the closest to the Prophet, that is considered to be most authoritative. The reports by Sahih Bukhari has to go through many processes of what the tradition of hadith developed later on. And this is why you have ilmu rijal and ilmu hadith, and many of the problems people have problem with are basically this hadith of what is called the Sahih. But the actually the better ones is the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Unfortunately, we have been sort of brought up that these madhab are separate and different. They're not separate and different. They're just different intensity. And this is what has not been imbued upon our understanding. So much so that if you want to take something from Maliki, this is al-fiqh. No, it should not, because this is the practices of the people closest to the Prophet. Now, your question might be, is it legal when they are different in other places, or is it theological? The theological part, this is quite fascinating because this is something that that we don't talk often. But you see, there is this saying of the Prophet, Ashabi ka nujum. My companions, they're like stars at night. Fabihin, by them you can be guided. This is something about what has to be mentioned, and this is why we must understand and appreciate what ahli tasawwuf is talking about, and what for example, even the hadith of the Prophet. Like for example, he was talking, the Rasulullah was talking about Uwais Qaran. He has not met the man, but the man is rightly guided. You must understand, and this is why people fail to understand the importance of what Prophet is trying to explain, but he cannot explain everything. When he says, the Quran says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا. Prophet explained by saying that when we answer Bala Shahidna in the plural, we recognize our differences, degrees of knowledge, degrees of commitment to Islam. At that point, although we are in different level, not at this manifested. That's what my wife was asking even today. What is this ideal reality? It is the haqa'iq, our reality in the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala when we were called to answer the first part of the covenant, Alastu bi rabbikum. So because Allah Ta'ala has given us our due measure of knowledge. So when our Rasulullah sent his companions, he's not sending people who are confused, equally confused. And this is why even what is this? One of the Sahaba was asking, "What is? I did not find this in the hadith of the Prophet." He said, "Huh? Mu'az." And what did he say? Yeah, see, yeah. Just go back by what you're, because they are already rightly got the worldview too, the worldview part. Yeah, and this is why what we have mentioned earlier, the confirmation, like Prophet al-attas mentioned about ibadah, it has to be constantly rehearsed and confirmed, because that is, because as I said, the beauty about the religion of Islam is that even you are wrong, with the right intention, Prophet will somehow either forgive it or give you, the benefit of the doubt. So this is why we have so many dimensions to be open about. So that is why Islam in China is a little bit different. It does not mean it is a different, completely out of Islam. Islam in India is slightly different. So they take on different fiqhi orientation. It does not matter. I think China is more Hanafi, isn't it? Yeah. They're not Shafi'i. Very fascinating. And mostly Shafi'i is basically coastal region. Yeah. But I think we must all learn different madhab, right, from now on, because now the world is so international. Yeah. I don't know whether that answer satisfy your question. Okay.
So, okay, kita ada lagi 15 minit, roughly. Sebelum ada soalan, please. Ya.
Bismillah. Tadi Dr. Zaini sebut tentang umat terdahulu ni dia tend to maknanya menyembah berhala selepas diberikan hidayah kan. Dan ini tidak berlaku secara nyata kepada umat Islam.
Ya.
Apakah dia mungkin kerana mukjizat kalimah la ilaha illallah itu?
Ya.
Sebab kalau kita lihat dalam kes Nabi Yaqub berpesan kepada anak itu, wa ta'budu min ba'di itu, dia mengaku bahawa qalu na'budu ilahaka wa ilaha abaika Ibrahim wa Ismail Ishaq ilahan wahidan wa nahnu lahu muslimun. Okay? Meaning dia mengaku. Tapi umat setelah itu ikut juga. Umat dia menyembah berhala. Tapi umat Islam ni kalau kita lihat dia tidak ada kes-kes yang besar. Mereka menyembah berhala. Paling tidak dia jadi Muslim yang tak beriman ataupun dia Muslim Kristian, tetapi menyembah berhala seperti Hindu tidak berlaku. Okay, right. Jadi kalau kita lihat dalam surah Ibrahim itu, Tuhan sebut alam tara kaifa daraballahu masalan kalimatan thayyibatan ka syajaratin thayyibatin asluha thabitun. Karena kalimah tauhid itu dia kuat, dia memegang kuat dan tidak sukar untuk ditumbangkan, dihilangkan dia punya tu syahadah itu kepada Allah Taala. Once dia sudah syahadah, maka agak sukar untuk dia kembali ataupun dia jadi orang yang menyembah idol. Jadi mungkin ini boleh diulas sedikit.
Betul, yeah. The other part I forgot to mention when I'm explaining about Millah, in the earlier civilization, they have every locality, they will have their own so-called deity. Every person have their own personal deity, but a locus deity they will have it, and this is called pagan. And this is what we later on developed, paganism. What it means is that every village will have their own sort of deity that they would worship. So that's the practice, at least among the Romans. So this is how the idea of paganism developed. It's not barbarism. Barbarism, the Romans have their own deities. Barbarism, they refer to people like non-Romans, non-Greek, and they refer to people like Europeans. And they believe it's small thing. That's why when you see movies made of them, they show like personal, handheld kind of thing. So they have those. And what you were saying is exactly how Prof. al-attas explains it. That this development of the idea of unity, tawheed, in exclusion of other deities, exactly at the time of Prophet Yaqub. Because his son says, we will believe according to your father and the Prophet Ibrahim. And then slowly the process of the kalimat shahada takes place. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what happens? All the idols in the Kaaba was demolished. Ibrahim alayhi salam tried to do that at his place. It didn't work. He got sacked. he was asked to leave. You see? Although he tried to use reason, because the people of his time were quite scientific and high level of reasoning. Ask the big one. Ask the big guy. It didn't work. He has to leave. But by the time of the Prophet, believing in idols are no longer effective. There is also a sociological aspect to it. I think because of the wars between the Sasanian and the Persian and the Romans, they keep on losing because the Romans and the Greek, before they go to war, they pray to the gods of Ares, the god of war. But there is a verse in the Quran, Mulibatu Rome will be defeated, and they did. And after that, they will win again. See, And there's a big discussion about this among the Mufassirun. Why is it that Rome has to win again? You know. So because of that, partly, but Alhamdulillah, you know, eventually, by the time of the Prophet, there is a detestation towards idol worship, and our Rasul Sallallahu managed to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And even until now, for example, for some of us, some kind of memento from Hajj that refers to the Kaaba is detestable. You get my point? We don't want models of Kaaba because for fear that it might lead to, you think there is a spiritual part to that. Okay, lah.
Barakat.
Oh, that's very wrong. That's very wrong. Even I have seen remnants of the old wood of the Kaaba. I have seen it. Maybe you remember. But when the kiswa of the Kaaba, you shouldn't associate that with barakah. If you do, then habis. Yeah. But this is what Prophet ﷺ is afraid of, and we must constantly talk about this. There's some ada customs that can lead us to wrong appreciation of our religion. Do not misdirect us. It's very important. That's why I remember first time I went to Hajj, I saw an old man take off his kupiah and wipe the dust of the Masjid al-Haram for barakah. It's just dust. And the worst is trying to bring back stones from Kaaba. It's wrong.
Yeah, last question. Kalau tak ada saya satu. Kenapa dalam sejarah ni, you can see the page 28, 29, when related to Prophet Ibrahim, say for example, there is no narration or no history that we can find other than Persian, Rome, say for example Japan ke ataupun New York ke
yeah.
But
why is the religion of Islam is only centered in that part of the world? Yeah, this has always been a question. This is why Dato I brought this book today, the Aqaid of al-Nasafi, and this is the manuscript was discovered in London by the late Uncle Aziz, and Uncle Aziz was trained in Japan. He's good in the Japanese language, but not good in Arabic and Jawi. He showed it to Prof. al-Attas, and Prof. al-Attas was quickly managed to decipher that it's one of the earliest specimens of the Aqidah of Muslims in this part of the world. It's the Aqaid al-Nasafi, buku Aqidah karangan Imam Nasafi, and that was translated into Malay in Jawi. So, concerning the prophets, exactly, this is what it is. Article number 16, page 71. The Malay part is page 71. Because it has to do with the sending of the messengers. In the sending of messengers, there is wisdom, is the benefit for all servants, not something futile, nor for it is for sport. That Allah SWT has sent a number of messengers from among mankind to their fellow mankind, announcing good tidings, cautioning against evil, making clear for all mankind what they have need for of the undertakings of the world and of religion. And he strengthened them by means of miracles that contradict the customary way of nature. Now this we must affirm this, not just believe but affirm that Allah SWT gave prophets mu'ajizah, and here he defines the mu'ajizah. The first among the prophets was Adam, and the last among them is Muhammad. Now a statement of their numbers, now this is where it is. A statement of their numbers has been in fact narrated in some traditions of the Holy Prophet. How many of the prophets really? It's mentioned in the hadith. However, it is better that we do not set a limit to their number by naming them, for indeed Allah exalted thee. He said, of some among them we have related to you their stories, some qasasna ba'dahum, the Quran says, and others among them we have not related to you their stories. for there is no security in their mention of their number against their being entered among them those who are not of them. Maknanya we shouldn't go into entertaining. Oh, is this, for example, is Confucius a prophet for the Chinese? Because he speaks about the same language as the hadith, you know, and we shouldn't go there. So why the prophet's activity? Because that's the center of civilization, and we know that the progeny of Noah, some of them spread out in the other parts of the world. And this is why, for example, the story of the flood, now people discover that it is narrated in almost every civilization of the world. So there is a common historical narrative about what happened. And this is why they may not have the same, just like the question of Wabi Amin tadi, about different parts of the world. They may heard of it, but they did not get the full story of it. You see, so but the center of activity, the ground zero of it, is in the place where the Greeks and the Romans were, and the Persians are major players. And the reason why, because it's still being called the cradle of civilization, the Tigris and Euphrates. It's fascinating. Although we have now contending claims of who has the earlier civilization, but if we go by writing, the Sumerians has the oldest writing. That's about 6,000 years ago, and that coincides with the dates of the prophets. It may be earlier, it's just that the specimen of what we have now.
Okay, kita dah empat setengah. Hari ni weekend petang, saya fikir ada baiknya kita tamatkan di sini dulu.
Okay.
Terima kasih banyak kepada semua yang hadir. Ada dua pengumuman, satu lepas ni kita boleh semayang kat sini lah saya fikir, ya, sebab dah lambat ni.
Oh, okay.
Dan lepas tu kita boleh ada sikit jamuan. Dan sekali lagi saya nak wawarkan pelancaran buku tafsir Maudu'i Sungai. Ini pada 25 hari bulan pukul 10 pagi di Institut Asia Eropah di Universiti Malaya oleh Tuanku Sultan Nazrin. Kita nak meraihkan majlis ilmu, bukan nak meraihkan pengarangnya. Pengarangnya pun tak tahu mana pun.
This Monday, yeah.
This coming Monday. Jadi boleh pergi terus, nanti apa-apa hal nanti saya cari saya.
Even for those who are online.
Yes, please. Ya. Yeah. Walaupun ada limitationnya. Tapi tak apalah, insyaAllah kita ada last minute, ada ramai yang tak datang. Jemputan khas keluarga pengarang. Kerabat. InsyaAllah kita akan tentukan bulan 10. Kita akan buat, saya akan bagi Prof, kita akan buat bulan 10, bulan 11, bulan 12 sekali. Saya insyaAllah bulan 10 ni pergi umrah. 10 bulan 11. Jadi nak pastikan yang jauh sikit daripada musim nak pergi itulah. Ya, insyaAllah doakan sama-sama. Dan sini ada buku-buku untuk siapa yang berminat. Boleh hubungi Akademi Jawi, Saudara Syukri, dan boleh bayar terus kepada Syukri lah. Ni tak ada kena-mena dengan bayaran kepada akaun saya.
Cuma Dato' Sis, kalau saya nak sebut satu perkara je. Bagi mereka yang, for those who are interested to follow what Prof al-attas has written about this thing in Malay, it is available. He has discussed about these things dalam Islam Faham Agama dan Asas Akhlak, and it's available in this collection, Himpunan Risalah. I think it's available from Zain bookstore maybe. And this book Dato' Sri is also the work of, I think, Dato' Raja jugalah, Create Fame and Kasih. Dato' Raja help to finance this.
Zain ada.
So this book is a compilation of Prof al-attas' work in Malay. You have Risalah untuk kaum muslimin, Islam Faham Agama dan Asas Akhlak, tinjauan ringkas peri ilmu dan pandangan anak, dan Islam dan sejarah kebudayaan Melayu. And the index was made by Dr. Hilmi. So please, if you find the English difficult, try to read the Malay. But if you find the Malay difficult, come to this sitting.
Ataupun datang belajar lah.
Terima kasih. Barakallahu fiikum.
Saya nak ambil kesempatan pada majlis yang mulia pada petang ini untuk membuat berita gembira lah bahawa Prof al-attas bersetuju untuk memberi syarahan kedua berkenaan buku yang beliau baru hasilkan ni. pada 21 Ogos 21 Oktober hari Sabtu 9 malam di Dewan Tuku Chancellor UM. Sebab masa pelancaran hari tu beliau macam berhenti tiba-tiba kan. Sebab tu beliau rasa macam semangat lagi nak bercakap. Kalau ikut teruskan tu persyaratan bateri siang ni kurang sikit. Bila malam tu dia makin semangat. So yang akan datang nanti akan buat pada pukul 9 malam 21 Oktober. Dewan Tuku Chancellor UM.
Ada bayaran ke?
Ada sedikit lah bayaran untuk cover cost kan. Jadi kita akan keluarkan poster dalam masa terdekat nantilah.
Ya,
itu formal sikit.
mungkin sebab saya tak setkan bila program kita akan datang. Sebab saya dimaklumkan ada Profesor Atas pun nak bagi kuliah, jadi kita bagi masa sikit lah, mungkin seminggu selepas tu baru kita ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan. Jadi sesi yang kita buat ini membolehkan kita memahami bukunya. Walaupun kita baca buku-buku yang baik, tapi kalau kita dengar sendiri pengarangnya cerita kenapa dia tulis perkara tersebut. Ada sebab kenapa ni, macam buku ni lah. Ya, buku ni. Ada orang bertanya, bila orang bertanya tu, dan kita jawab melalui buku tu. Ya, tengah menulis tiba-tiba dalam satu sesi orang bertanya, macam ni. Jadi kita tak apalah, saya senaraikan jawapan-jawapan tu dan kita tulis 45 halaman dalam buku tersebut. Jadi dia lain dengan orang yang menyendiri buat tesis PhD itu, dia lain. Dia ikut dia punya format PhD. Penulis buku macam ni biasanya menjelaskan perkara-perkara yang berbangkit tentang perkara yang dibincangkan tu pada masa ini. Sebab tu saya tanya Profesor Zaini tadi tentang kenapa orang Islam ni tak berakhir dengan agama-agama milah yang lain. Milah yang lain tu dia terpesong. Sembah berhala, kemudian buat salib, buat apa. Kita alhamdulillah masih ada pada landasan yang betul. Dan di mana mereka ni, tu yang perkara-perkara ni, saya pergi ke Jepun baru ni, dia bagi tahu National History of Japan tu. Dia orang tak nulis ni 2000 tahun yang lalu. 2000 tahun sebelum Masihi. Di Jepun tu dah ada tulisan. Wallahu a'lam bishawab. Jemput kita solat dulu bagi ni. Kita tak sempat, tak semua kita lelaki dulu lah ke atas, perempuan sila. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.